Friends, this is Frederick Henry, and thank you for tuning in to the Frederick Henry podcast, The Frederick Henry Show. And today I'd like to talk about an incident that happened to me many years ago during the Olympics that were held in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was passing by a store where the Olympics were going to be held about, a year before the Olympics happened. And there was just an ordinary drawing of Africa in the window, and the person who owned the store wrote underneath the drawing, "Africa is a continent, not a country." And this has been a very big information for me. By the way, I'm white, I'm European ancestry. So let's just be clear about that. But this interested me. I said, well, what does the person want to say? Does the person want to say something? And I think the person wanted to say that, people have a tendency to say Africa as though all Africans are the same, and that African is a nationality or a racial category or something like that, or a minority group or whatever. African Americans, what in the world does that mean? And so I began to look at the map again and realize that there's Northern Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Chad, Niger, Sierra Leone, and so on, Nigeria, and so forth. And then there's Mid-Africa, Rhodesia, and Zimbabwe, and Madagascar on the coast, and the like more. And then there's South Africa, and the like. And you realize that Africa is not one unified national racial categorization. It's a whole continent filled with various people of various cultures and various ethnicities and various histories, all of them being unique. Now, I understand a few things. I want to go first into this uniqueness part. So before I finish this, I just want to check my notes, and I want to list for you the significant tribal groups of Africa. So let me pause here and get to that. Okay, so what I have in front of me is probably incomplete. I think there are actually something like 3,000 tribal groups in Africa. And these tribal groups, I believe, deserve recognition. I believe they deserve identification. Each one of them is unique and important, and we should be paying attention to them. So starting from the top of my list, we have the Amharic group, which really is Ethiopian and the like. We have the Maasai, that's another tribal group, type of group. We have the Hottentot group. We have the Zulu group. We have the Hansa group, and we have the Arabic group, and others. There are many others. And that I don't mean to do injustice to all the groups, but I can't name 3,000. What I'm getting at here is that people want to say that they're honoring black African people by calling them black Africans or African Americans. But is that really true? Don't they deserve to be called by their legitimate names, whether they're Maasai or Amharic or other groups in Africa? So what happens in America? Well, you understand. The African people who were brought here as slaves, they weren't allowed to have their own ethnic identification. They weren't told that they were from Chad or Sierra Leone or from what we call now Zimbabwe or the Congo. They weren't told any of that type of stuff. Having been captured by the Muslim Arabic traders, that's who captured them. Now, many of the African tribes captured each other, and they sold the captured peoples into slavery. They sold them mainly to Arabic Muslim traders from the north who took all these poor people who were captured in warfare and raised and everything else by other African tribes and sold into slavery through the Arabic traders. These Arabic traders in turn sold them to the French and to the Dutch and to the English and the like more. And then these people eventually sold them to the Americans. In our case, that's all I'm interested in. But these people were not giving ethnic identification. They had their own language, and they were maybe able to identify each other in slavery, but they didn't really know much about who they were or where they came from or their culture. And so it's not really true for people to say that they're an African American. Yes, they may be from Africa, but what part of Africa? Are they from Nigeria, Northern Africa? Are they from Ethiopia? Are they from Madagascar? Are they from South Africa? Or are they from any other place in Africa? So what I'm trying to say is that, remember Roots. Roots was an attempt by Alex Haley, to try to bring this forward that African Americans actually do have an ethnic identity, a tribal identity, and from Africa, although they don't know it. So we just mix everybody up into African Americans. Now, somebody might ask the question, is this helpful? Well, it's understandable, but that's all you can do, really, in these cases, unless you're from Trinidad. You can trace your ancestry, but if you're from Trinidad or Tobago or any of the islands, you're still going to be, St. Kitts, you're still going to be an African, a slave brought to the islands by Dutch traders or English traders or French traders or any other kind of traders to work their plantations and to be enslaved on the island. So ultimately, your point of origin is Africa, but where? Now, what do I mean by that? Why do I find that important? I happen to be a white man, Caucasian. My ancestry through my father is from Germany, so I can identify a country. And within that country, I can identify that I was from northern Germany. And within that country, I can identify that I was from Bremerhaven, Germany. Now, on my mother's side, I'm Polish. I can identify that I really came from the part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire called Galicia. But beyond that, because of the way the Polish people were treated, I cannot really claim to know a place, a town, a location for my Polish ancestry. So really, my Polish identification is strong because I like it, I love it actually, but I can't go beyond Galicia. But in my father's case, I can go all the way back to Bremerhaven. I have visited Germany. I have visited the exact location of my father's birth and my grandfather's birth and my great-grandfather's birth and my grandmother's and all of that, aunts and uncles. Now, the African-American, so-called, cannot go to Africa and say, I was born in this tribal group, I was born in this region of the continent, I was born within this country, countries didn't exist maybe at the time, I spoke this language of the African peoples, and I can identify this point, this village, this place, this whatever it is, as my home stomping grounds. And Kenyans might be able to do that. They're a little bit more knowledgeable in the Kenyan case. Amharic people, Ethiopians, may be able to do that as well. But basically, most African Americans who come out of slavery cannot do that. And so what I'm saying is maybe there is no such thing, really, as an African American. Just like, is there really such a thing as a German American or a Polish American or a Russian American or Italian American? Whatever, all these phrases, what do they mean? Is it helpful, really? Well, I have pride in my German heritage, and because I can identify locality and geography and relatives and the like more, there is a certain helpfulness to it. But in the case of the African American, it's not all that helpful. Now, what does this bring me down to in terms of Trump and the like more? Yesterday, I watched the Speaker of the House of Representatives, my God, the third most powerful person in the United States of America, put on what she called was African cloth, a stole of some kind, in multicolored weaving. Now, I identify that particular stole as being Kente cloth. Kente cloth comes from Nigeria, belongs to the Hansa people, and it doesn't belong to the Zulu people, it doesn't belong to the Madagascar people, it doesn't belong to the Ethiopian people, it doesn't belong to the Sudanese people, it doesn't belong to the Chad people, it doesn't belong to the Egyptian people. All of that's part of Africa, by the way, but it belongs to the Hansa people. So she's saying, by putting this on, that she, as a white American of Roman Catholic and Italian descent, is identifying with the Hansa people. But she claims that just putting that cloth on is identifying with the African people. Well, that isn't really true. And it dishonors, I believe, it dishonors those people, be that as it may. Then the Speaker of the House of Representatives got on her knees with about 30 other representatives in honor of all Black Lives Matter. Now, this is the third most powerful person in the United States. Can you imagine the Vice President of the United States doing that? Or the President of the United States getting on his knees in honor of Black Lives Matter because of white guilt or white privilege or white whatever, please. It's disgraceful. I have never believed in such a thing. I cannot believe that anybody, black, white, or Chinese, or Asian, or any South American, from the continent of Africa, from the continent of Asia, from the subcontinent of India, anybody should get on their hands and knees and kiss the boot of the oppressor, or the tyrant, or the terrorist. And in this case, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all these people did that. Shame, shame, shame. And the American people should be outraged. We should be unbelievably angry that the third most powerful person, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the United States of America, should wear kente cloth, claiming it's African cloth, and then get on her knees and basically, in essence, kiss the boot of Black Lives Matter. This is the most disgraceful action. I cannot even describe my disgust. It makes me want to vomit. And not as a Republican, as a Democrat, but as an American. And I think we should be outraged. And I think that also Americans who are black from Africa, the continent, should be outraged. This is pandering. This is puckering up. This is, it's disgraceful. I mean, I think Americans who are black, of African heritage, whether it's North African, Central African, or Southern African heritage, who may not know whether they're from one particular country or another, should be outraged that Nancy Pelosi and the others were so disrespectful as to do such a thing as that. It's disgraceful. Secondly, it amazes me that people tell me that they want to defund the police to honor black Americans. What are you talking about? The police are the police. That's what the police are. That's what the police do. Yes, there's abuse. Yes, there are some people. But how many officers, black and white, male and female, were killed in the last month? I think the number is 14. 14 officers of the police forces in the United States of America, I believe that's the number, were killed in the line of duty, and including a retired police chief, a black retired police chief, not in the line of duty, just because somebody killed him, murdered him. Don't we have any honor and any dignity? Don't we have any integrity in America that we should want to allow ourselves to fall prey to this Black Lives Matter tyranny? Now, I'm going to make a suggestion about that as well. I am in the opinion that Antifa, which is around 20 years old and well known to the FBI, the CIA, and all the other agencies, and now been declared a terrorist organization, is very effectively and very efficiently moving over into Black Lives Matter, and they're going to seize control of Black Lives Matter because Black Lives Matter has the word black in it. And because of that, the idea that if you join Black Lives Matter or support Black Lives Matter, your corporation, AT&T, or Starbucks, or any of these various other corporate entities sending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter, extortion, it's a crime, extortion, but everybody seems to think it's a great thing. These people think that they're supporting the black community, and they're not. They're supporting the oppressors, the destructors, the exploiters of the black community, and their handlers and their controllers. And I wouldn't be surprised if their handlers and their controllers and the others are white. So watch out, Black America, my dear friends. Now, just in case you think there's anything when I use the word Black Americans, I am from New York. I was raised in New York. I was raised in an integrated neighborhood in the project area of Upper Manhattan. I have very dear friends who are Black Americans. I was raised up with Black Americans in the streets of New York City. I do not feel any